Good afternoon. How are you? So I hope you remember that spring forward, fall back. So we lose an hour today, and you probably know that. But it doesn't matter. Maybe it's so much on the weekend, but it will on Monday. And Thomas Jefferson has had a disappointing report today because although it's 44, 46, it's been really icy cold. There's even been some snow flurries. And the wind is powerful, and it may not disturb the sound of my voice here in the trees that are reviving. And just as I say that, the wind is blown up again. It cuts like a knife through you today. Even though the temperatures are not so bad, the wind chill factor is pretty serious. So what's going on? Well, the overall reaction I have to the talking heads is that they talk, and they kind of talk nonsense. They say things that don't make sense. And I don't know why that is. I suppose sometimes you ask a question because you don't want to be the one standing there telling everybody what you think as the host. So you ask somebody else the question. So there's that. And there's always the question of whether you want them to come back again if you beat them up much. But I think you can ask questions in such a way that you show respect for the person, maybe undeserved, but you get to ask the question anyhow. The top of my list, maybe not the worst thing that's happening, but it's not understandable to me, and it is the Pope. Really basically asking Ukraine to wave the white flag, meaning to surrender and sit down and offer to settle this thing. Why isn't that approach made to Putin? And if you don't think you can offer it to Putin, then why should you offer it to Ukraine? It's shown no indication and is, to everybody's knowledge, trying to gather the support to fight the war, to win the war. And we have the Pope saying things like this. I just don't get it. And if you're going to mix into international relations, you deserve to be told to butt out. And that's not very helpful, and I think he's wrong to have said it that way and to done it that way. We have some fun this evening. I don't know if I'll watch it, but I am curious about the outcomes. I suppose if I had to vote, and not that I do, although I've seen the there are a whole bunch of really good movies this year, and Oppenheimer for the 96th Oscar Awards is my choice of Best Picture. And that has to do with my interest in physics and science, but also it was a tour de force by Cillian Murphy, who should get Best Actor for playing Oppenheimer. And I don't know about you, but if you saw it, you know that Robert Downey was not recognizable as the actor we're familiar with. And I don't want to be unfair here because he's played all sorts of parts. But this was so dramatically different, requiring real acting. It's very hard, in my mind, to choose another supporting actor. Now, that said, there were several unbelievable movies. Maestro is one which was terrific, and Bradley Cooper, I suppose, would be a possible winner as well. And then, in terms of Best Actress, I thought we had in Killers of the Flower Moon, Lily Gladstone was excellent in that role, and so I think it's hard to say anything bad about any of the movies, but if they have to choose someone, those are kind of my pecking order. You have your own. You may have strong disagreements, but it's art. Some have mentioned that movies that make a docudrama of a real life person sometimes do better at the Oscars. Well, who's to say that Bradley Cooper captured the maestro? But I think he did. Being a New Yorker, I saw him enough, usually on the stage. I didn't know him. I wasn't ever with him that way. And then when it comes to Oppenheimer, I'd read a lot about him and the book that they based the movie on. And I thought that was a transformation. Murphy, the way he played that role is just astonishing. So what about the talking heads? Well, here we go like this. Issue number one, we are going to give supplies to those very much in need of food and medicine and things like that in Gaza. And we're going to do it by setting up barges or rafts or whatever, and we're going to take care of the people there, or as much as we can. Now, so we're going to try to save people, and the question is kind of, we're going to give money to save them while we're giving money for missiles to Israel to kill them. And you know, I know that everybody's so upset about this, but we've had enough of the killing, and we've had enough of the BS about, why we can't have a ceasefire. And frankly, we should tell them all to pound sand if they're not going to try to work this out. What the hell is our integrity worth? What is our leadership worth if we can basically be a participant of war crimes by both sides at different times? So we have to somehow or other find our own path for our own country to teach others what we think is right. So if we're going to have food and caring with one set of funds that we devote to it, are we going to have killing ongoing at the same time? What is the net gain? Do we save more than we kill? Probably we kill more than we save. And the ones we're killing are not combatants. It's a very bizarre and ahistoric event in the sense that I don't know that I can think of a comparable one, but maybe every war has those who are helping and others who are hurting at the same time. Probably in a wartime setting for a net loss of people and a gain of brutality. So that's one thing. Turning to our neck of the woods, Congress, we can't get people to agree to give money to those who need it. Okay, so money for Israel, but only if it's also for Ukraine. Okay, I understand that, but we're also at a point where, what does money for Israel mean? How are we going to dedicate it? How are we going to control it? Then we have money for the borders, but Republicans say only if we secure the borders first. Oh, what is that about? And then we have the domestic problem, which is how do we continue on to preserve justice in this amazing sentiment we find ourselves of, well, just go to the ballot box. Okay, what do I think is going on? I think what's going on now, and there's some advantage in this, is that the judgments in the cases against Trump are compromising his resources. And he's trying to dodge the requirements so he can appeal, but if he can't get the funds, he can't appeal. And it would appear right now the only place he can get the funds to wage an appeal is in the Carroll case. Not the big one, not the one that would close down his businesses and prevent him from operating in New York, nor his children. That's pretty strong. And he's facing a trial on March the 25th, the hush money trial. And that promises to be quite a celebra. So what are we looking at here? Well, what we're looking at is a slow but inexorable march forward in which we get victories that get mussed up, if you will, because the outcome seems susceptible to delays or being overturned by courts or time. and we're marching forward to a waterfall, and we're all going to go over that waterfall. And the question is, when we come to the bottom and we float to the top, is Biden the president? And has Trump not just lost the race for the presidency, but been found guilty and imprisoned and still owes all of that money? That's the result I would like. Now, some have said, well, if Trump is elected, can't he just pardon himself? And first, I don't think he will be elected, but there's going to be a fight to get to that point where he loses again. But the question of pardoning himself is not as simple as Trump keeps saying. Namely, you can't pardon yourself. A president can't pardon himself, or to put more appropriately in legal language, may not. It's not authorized. It's not permitted. And why do I say that? Well, first of all, to take just the general observation, do you think Nixon would have jumped through those hoops to have his vice president, Ford, pardon him upon becoming the president, having Nixon resign from office? There had to be a reason. And the reason was the Justice Department, quoting law that goes back to the 1600s, said that a man may not be a judge in his own case. And that's precisely what this is. And then I think it's 1974, the Justice Department wrote a memo to that effect. And it said the president couldn't pardon himself because a man may not be a judge in his own case. You see, the conflict is intrinsic, germane, and it's an abuse of power and authority, and has been thought of as such uniformly since it was first enunciated, that you couldn't feather your own nest, basically. So all those people who think Trump will get elected and pardon himself and pardon others, okay, let's just assume the fantasy occurs and he is elected. Those who he may pardon are other than himself, but he may not pardon himself. Now, how would that be litigated? Well, say he was told to go to prison in the federal cases. He would be told, you have to go to federal prison. And he would interpose a pardon to himself to avoid that. And the court would consider it, probably as slowly as it's doing everything now. And ultimately the right answer is, sorry fella, you can't pardon yourself. Now there are alternatives. There would be a legislative alternative. But depending about who gets elected to the House and the Senate, that might not work. So all this talk of a pardon, ironically, should he be elected and sitting in a prison cell for the Bragg case, which is a state case, so that there is no question, there is no pardon power as to that case, he would, well, in some fantasy world, be allowed to pardon others, and there might be limitations on that as well, but not himself. So I leave you with this little nugget of legal truth, and we'll have to revisit again the process by which this would be fought. But it's another example of a public debate ignoring the righteous legal answer to the question. Can he pardon himself? No, we can't. So I'm out here in Chile, and the sun came out while we were walking, so that's sweet. And you can see spots of green more and more. So we're headed toward that spring of joy and happiness. Holly and I had an unbelievable trip yesterday, and pretty serious rains from Northern Virginia up to Pennsylvania to Biden country to look at a car, used car, basically a Ford Expedition for farm chores, to move around hay and feed and stuff like that. It can be pretty heavy, and there's some distance from each of the places where we keep our animals. So that's and you couldn't even see part of the way going up there. It was really something. So here I am in the Cathedral of Trees, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. I wasn't here yesterday because I was driving. Holly and I drove, I don't know, 4+ hours each way. Bye-bye.